Good morning and welcome to Rising. We've got another great show for you today on our Friday installment, reacting to everything that took place at the Democratic National Convention yesterday and all this week. We had that speech by Kamala Harris last night, but first we're going to get to some important news concerning another major candidate for now in the presidential contest. Take it away, Jess.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is set to make a major announcement Friday afternoon. This comes as his running mate, Nicole Shanahan, said earlier this week that the pair could exit the race. He filed paperwork in Arizona on Wednesday to have his name removed from the ballot. His campaign confirmed this to The Hill.
Shanahan also dropped a bombshell when speaking about their prospects. She and RFK Jr. might not just drop out, they could be endorsing Donald Trump. Now, polls have showed that this independent candidate has pulled votes from Biden, Harris, and from Trump as well. If he does get out of the race and throw his support behind Trump, what does that mean for Harris? Now, conservative personalities Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly have weighed in on her Sirius XM show. Let's watch them discussing it.
I think it'll help Trump, probably. I don't really know. But I know for a fact that Bobby running third party would hurt Trump because there is a big overlap in their voters. And it's not on all the issues. They disagree on a bunch of issues. But anyone who thinks the current system is corrupt is not voting for Kamala Harris.
Kelly referenced polling conducted in swing states showing how tight the race is, but RFK could break that if he gets out. Let's watch.
He may not have the votes that he had maybe, 6 months ago when he was polling more like 11%, but he truly could swing this election if the people getting ready to vote for him did what he asked them to do and voted for, let's say, in this case, Trump.
So we are waiting to see what RFK Jr. is going to say later today. We don't know, but we've heard some reporting. I have some reason to believe as well. I do think he's going to be getting out of the race. Nicole Shanahan was pretty clear that they do not want to be seen as helping Kamala Harris win. And while the ticket has pulled votes from both parties and from independents, people who are not voting for either party, there is, I think, slightly more overlap with the Trump campaign. And so RFK Jr. getting out, endorsing Trump, even that means a tiny number of votes moving into the Trump column. That could be all it takes to decide this election. So we will see if that's what happens.
I might even take it a step further, Robbie. I don't think it's just that they don't want to be seen as helping Kamala Harris win. I think it's pretty clear to me, at least, that Nicole Shanahan doesn't want to help Kamala Harris win. She said it's never been our intention to be a spoiler.
Right, no, it's genuine. I agree.
Yeah.
It's not that they don't want to be seen at doing it. They don't want it to happen. They're against her.
Which leads me to a new conspiracy theory I have about the RFK Jr. campaign. I believe it's possible. They talk to Trump, they talk strategy. He stays on the ballot, and he could do this while still dropping out of the race. He could say, I'm no longer seeking, the presidency, but once you fight to get on a ballot, a lot of the times you're stuck there. They're already printed and what have you. They have their timelines.
It's going to be state by state whether he actually can get off the ballot.
Like he did in Arizona, he could strategically only pull out in states where he was drawing more votes from Trump and stay in states where he's drawing more votes from Kamala Harris.
He could do that. Look, I don't blame him for getting out, for endorsing Trump, for wanting to use whatever leverage he can. The Democrats, not mostly the Republicans, although maybe they were up to no good as well. I'd be perfectly willing to believe it. But what I do know is that the Democratic Party, Democratic activists, did everything they could to fight RFK Jr.'s participation in this race. The Biden campaign, back when it was the Biden campaign, so many moons ago, had hired activists to a task force to monitor the RFK Jr. situation and do whatever they could to make it more difficult to fight him, not just in the way that campaigns are fighting each other, but to fight him legally, to make it more difficult for him to be on the ballot. In New York, they succeeded. Democratic activists brought a court case that was going to disqualify him from the ballot on a complete technicality. So that's what the Democratic Party was doing. Now, both parties were complicit in keeping him off the debate stage. Trump and Biden said, they don't agree on anything except we will not include RFK Jr. on the debate stage. The mainstream media was perfectly willing to go along with that. They didn't push back, even though by he was arguably had qualified under the former debate criteria of 15%. It had to be 15% in a couple polls. I looked at the polls. It looked to me like he would arguably qualify based on that. Didn't care, didn't matter to them. They were not going to let the American voters hear from him in this election that's all about the health of democracy itself. No, we can't show more choices. So he was kept out, and so it's come to this. And then his poll numbers started to dip back down because he just couldn't get the attention, the media attention these other figures were getting by being on the debate stage. So he's doing what he can, and it sounds like he's going to be endorsing Trump, maybe in exchange for some kind of inclusion if Trump were to win the election. As an independent candidate, when you're not even running to build up a party, the Libertarian and Green Party candidates are at least trying to get better ballot access for the next cycle, more raise money for the next cycle, that kind of thing. Honestly, it makes sense given the constraints on our system, which utterly support a myopic two-party duopoly.
I have to be careful because I keep saying things on Rising that kind of come true. Remember when we initially covered the phone call about, oh, you're going to be so great, Bobby Kennedy. Drop out and endorse me. It's going to be so big for you. He sounded like an LA talent agent. I love that phone call. But when we covered it, I said, what position would it be that RFK Jr. would want? And I said Health and Human Services. And then subsequently there was reporting that is what was discussed. But we don't know for sure. This was people close to the matter that leaked this to the press. Do I think that that's a good position for him? No. I mean, he has strong feelings on vaccines, on the pharmaceutical industry, and I think those feelings are good and valid. But when I look at his experience, it's in, being an environmental lawyer. That should be where he's placed within the administration.
Yeah,
Will Donald Trump care that much about the environment to put him there?
And they're apart on that issue.
They are. And so
yeah.
Can you imagine RFK Jr. as the head of Health and Human Services? I think we need someone more experienced in that position. That would be very scary.
I'm not sure I would find it very scary. I would like to see him in a position of some kind of ensuring some kind of compliance with the First Amendment in terms of the behavior of government bureaucrats. That's what I would like to see, like an advisory role to make sure that the messaging from federal agencies to social media companies is consistent with the First Amendment and is not pressuring them to take down content. I think that would be a good role for him. If he's part of, a health advisory role that is part of not requiring people to get to comply with COVID mandates, an anti-mandate role, that would also be something I would be interested in seeing him in. But I don't know.
Has anyone asked the worm what it wants?
Oh my goodness.
Isn't there someone you've forgotten to ask?
The worm, the bear.
Bobby Kennedy campaign.
Yeah. Look, I will miss his involvement in this race. I didn't agree with a lot of his policy positions, but he's an intellectually curious person who made himself available to independent, contrarian, libertarian, even left kinds of podcasts and spaces. He was responsive to our show. He's been interviewed here multiple times. There's something to be said for someone who is interested in the exchange of ideas enough that they'll come into friendly spaces, unfriendly spaces, hitting up the podcast ecosystem. That's a lot more than can be said of Joe Biden and Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. So I have some affection for the attention he brought to the censorship issues, some of the mandates, and all of those other things. And if he could influence either of the major candidates to be more responsible on those issues, I would say the campaign has been a success.
Right. I think that what we've learned from the RFK Jr. campaign is that you can run as an independent in the United States of America. He's made it slightly easier for the next person who wants to do that.
Yes, and there's that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. We've got lots more to come on our show. More Rising right after this.